Trudy, as my grandmother is now known, spent the first third of her life in Nazi-controlled Austria throughout World War II. Recently, I came across some memoirs that she had written about her experiences during the time, and I saw an opportunity to find out and record an alternative viewpoint on the war.
I was born Waltraud Maria Weitz, and as all human beings, I was born into a geography and history of the world that is just for me. It is very difficult for me to think back and in hindsight say, oh, this was a most terrible life I've had. Because at the time, I did not know about this. I was idealistic, so were the people around me. And in fact, I did gain a better education and a better life than if Hitler had never come to power, because life in my first years in Vienna and even then was quite miserable.
Before the National Socialist Party came to power, much of Austria experienced a Great Depression. This led to much violence and anger within the Austrian population. Trudy went to a local school for the early years of her life, but when the NSP came to power, it was quickly converted into a government-run facility.
I feel not guilty so much, but absolutely sad for every one of the people who have had to suffer from the way the Germans behaved.
In June 1941, while the Austrian nation slept, the largest military force ever amassed invaded the previously Allied Russians. In 1942, Trudy went to the upper part of the school in Hubertendorf. This, like the previous school, was run through the NSP, but was in a big country house in big grounds. As part of their involvement with the NSP, the school took Trudy and her classmates to a military hospital in Ypres, where they were to cheer up the wounded German soldiers.
We brought some gifts, and we went through the wards singing folk songs and talking to them, and we were allowed to go from bed to bed. But the last time we went, there was a soldier who had had a leg amputated, and he was in great pain. That is, he always felt that it was the foot still aching, which of course happens to people when they have a leg amputated. I mean, so many people experienced the war when there were cannons and bullets and whatever, but we hadn't done, but we saw what it could do to young people. It was really quite awful. You just sort of thought we were involved in this extraordinary fight, but we still were on the right side. That is it. We just never yet got the feeling that that it was in any way our fault or the Germans' fault. It must be all these other nations who are against us, which we are continually told.
Whilst Trudy was celebrating Yulefest in the Christmas holidays of 1942, the German army were facing down Russia in Stalingrad. The entire nation waited for word of their loved ones, but the news would be grim.
Rumours came, of course, of the Russians advancing, and the atrocities that they committed, of course, and that the front was coming nearer and nearer, and one really had no idea how that could ever be resolved.
At the beginning of April, the students were called together and told that the school was going to close. They all had to make their way home as it was no longer safe because of the invading Russians.
A teacher said that she would put us up at her parents' or at her family's house, and next morning we could get the train from there.
Before they could leave, a train on the railway outside the school was bombed, and in the ensuing panic, Trudy and her classmates began their flight.
So it was dark, this train was on fire, and as we went out of the school, we saw masses of people all coming from the east, some carrying children, some having suitcases. Bombs had not only been dropped on the train, but also on the road. So we walked over sort of craters. We had a little cart where we put our suitcases, and we pulled this cart along, going down into these craters and up again. And never, ever in my life have I felt so absolutely lonely. Well, I mean, yes, there were two people with me, but we'd been in a boarding school where you wake up to the bell, you go to lunch at the bell, go to bed at the bell, and you are suddenly you are there in this. I can't explain it. Hell, it appeared, and all we could do was sort of battle on and walk on.
After escaping the chaos, Trudy and her friend Liesl travelled by train back to their home of Zissersdorf, narrowly missing a second air raid on their journey. Expecting to finally be safe and home with her family, Trudy was dismayed to find that her parents felt it wasn't safe for her there either, and had arranged for her to travel with the wealthy owner of a local sawmill to the relative safety of Poland, which the Allied forces would be occupying rather than the Russians. They travelled via a small, slow tractor with an attached caravan and trailer, taking a route across northern Austria through the hilly Bohemian forests to Bavaria.
We arrived at the outskirts of a place called Waldkirchen, a small town north of Passau in Bavaria. After a detour, we crossed the Danube at Vilshofen and then arrived at Griesbach in the Rottal.
The group found refuge with a family of farmers in a small village near Waldkirchen, helping out in the fields nearby as payment for their stay.
We had no idea what Zissersdorf was like, if there had been any war still going on or not. We, from end of April till beginning of September, did not know whether our parents were alive or dead. We were walking through Waldkirchen, the town where we had got to, and I looked ahead, and I suddenly said to somebody next to me, "This person looks like Herr Honigschläger." He was the husband of one of the women with the two small children with us. And at the same moment as I said that, this man started to run towards us, and we running towards him, and it was this man.
The man had walked around 200 miles following whatever traces of his family and the caravan he could. After endless days of walking and searching, he finally had caught up to them.
And we fell over him and said, "Oh, how are our relatives? Is everybody still alive?" And we wanted to know in one sentence straight away how things are. The relief was tremendous when we heard that, in fact, yes, when the Russians came to Zissersdorf, the war had already ended the day before. So there was no shooting and no damage to houses. But even so, it wasn't easy for the people, because the soldiers, of course, arrived. My mother said later on that the first troop seemed to be quite ordinary soldiers, but the second ones looked sort of Mongols, and they were very keen on stealing and raping and generally making a nuisance of themselves. They stole mainly big clocks, machinery, bicycles above all. My cousin, who was about 14 then, said that all she could remember the first few days was young Russian soldiers cycling round and round the village, evidently very happy with that. It was chaos, really. That next thing was chaos. The bridges, had all the bombs everywhere. Nobody gave out any more coupons to get yourself food, so people had to go and get what they could. And what are we going to do now? Well, we're going to go to school because we want to carry on our lives now. It's just, when I think about it now, I'm beginning to wonder what on earth.
At 2:41 a.m. on the morning of May 7th, 1945, Germany unconditionally surrendered all forces to the Western and Soviet combined powers.
When we heard that the war had ended, we just felt, well, we've lost the war. But it was only while we were at the grammar school that we went to the cinemas, to see films, and always before the film one had to see a program about the concentration camps. And that was the first time that we really knew anything about it. It seems strange, we can't have been indoctrinated very much because I decided to study English and German, and one of our schoolmates married a Jew. So how was it that we were not more influenced by all this? When I was at university, the Students' Union arranged for us to go and work in student farm camps. I went to learn English, and I picked potatoes, and not only that, I picked myself a husband.